Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. The championship basketball game reached its climactic moments. Sweat glistened on the players' faces, their eyes locked on the orange sphere that held the key to victory. Among the athletes on the court, two figures stood out, Elijah Thompson and Soraya Martinez, star players for their respective teams. Elijah, a tall and muscular young man with dark skin and close-cropped hair, dribbled the ball with practiced ease. His royal blue jersey clung to his broad shoulders as he weaved between opponents. On the other side of the court, Soraya's lithe frame darted back and forth, her long brown ponytail swinging behind her as she sought an opening. Her crimson uniform contrasted sharply with Elijah's, marking them as rivals in this heated contest. The clock ticked down its final seconds. Elijah made his move, driving towards the basket with determination etched on his face. Soraya, ever the defender, stepped into his path. Their bodies collided at full speed, a resounding thud echoing through the gym as they crashed to the polished wooden floor. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Both players lay motionless for a heart-stopping moment. Then, slowly, they began to stir. Elijah blinked, his vision swimming. Something felt off. He raised a hand to his head, confused by the unfamiliar sensation of long hair brushing against his fingers. Across from him, Soraya groaned, her voice deeper than usual. "What the hell?" Elijah muttered, shocked by the high-pitched sound that emerged from his throat. He looked down at himself, or rather at the body he now inhabited. Gone were his muscular arms and broad chest, replaced by a slender female form clad in Soraya's crimson uniform. Soraya pushed herself up, her movements awkward and uncoordinated. She stared at her hands, Elijah's hands, with growing horror. "This can't be happening," she said, her words coming out in Elijah's deep baritone. The referee's whistle cut through their confusion. "Are you two all right?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Neither player could find the words to respond. How could they possibly explain what had just occurred? The impossible had happened. In that moment of collision, Elijah and Soraya had somehow switched bodies. The next few hours passed in a blur of confusion, disbelief, and growing panic. Parents were called, doctors consulted, and still, no one could offer an explanation for the bizarre event that had transpired on the basketball court. As night fell, Elijah found himself in Soraya's bedroom, surrounded by unfamiliar posters and the scent of flowery perfume. He, or was it she now, sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the reflection in the mirror. Soraya's face looked back at him, brown eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. Elijah ran a hand through the long, silky hair, marveling at the sensation. A tentative knock at the door interrupted his exploration. "Soraya?" It was Soraya's mother, her voice laced with concern. "Are you feeling any better, sweetheart?" Elijah cleared his throat, trying to mimic Soraya's voice. I'm okay, Mom. Just tired. All right, dear. Try to get some rest. We'll figure this out in the morning." As footsteps retreated down the hallway, Elijah flopped back onto the bed, his mind racing. How long would this last? Would they ever switch back? And most perplexing of all, why didn't he feel more upset about this turn of events? Across town, Soraya was having a markedly different experience. She paced Elijah's room, her new body feeling clumsy and oversized. Every movement was a reminder of the impossibility of their situation. She caught sight of herself in Elijah's mirror and quickly looked away, unable to reconcile the masculine form with her sense of self. "This is a nightmare," she muttered, Elijah's deep voice still startling her. "We have to fix this. We have to switch back." But as the days turned into weeks, it became clear that a solution wasn't forthcoming. The incident at the basketball game had caught the attention of authorities far beyond their small town. Soon, men and women in dark suits and sunglasses descended upon them, their questions probing and relentless. One morning, a sleek black car pulled up in front of Soraya's house. Elijah, still inhabiting Soraya's body, watched from the window as a tall woman in a suit stepped out. Her red hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her green eyes scanned the surroundings with practiced efficiency. The doorbell rang, and Elijah heard Soraya's mother answer. Moments later, there was a knock on the bedroom door. "Soraya, there's someone here to see you." Elijah opened the door, coming face to face with the red-haired woman. She offered a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hello, Soraya. I'm Special Agent Cassandra Reed with the FBI. I'd like to ask you a few questions about the incident." Elijah nodded, trying to channel Soraya's demeanor. "Of course. Come in." Agent Reed entered the room, her gaze sweeping over the girl's belongings. She took a seat in the desk chair while Elijah perched nervously on the edge of the bed. "I understand this must be a confusing and frightening time for you," Agent Reed began, her tone professional but not unkind. "We're doing everything we can to understand what happened and how to reverse it. But to do that, I need you to be completely honest with me. Can you do that?" Elijah nodded, his hands fidgeting in his lap. It felt strange to be addressed as Soraya, to be expected to speak for her experiences, but he knew he had to try. "Excellent," Agent Reed continued. "Now, walk me through exactly what you remember from that night." Elijah took a deep breath, recounting the events of the basketball game as best he could. He described the collision, the disorientation, and the shocking realization that followed. Agent Reed listened intently, occasionally jotting notes in a small black notebook. "And how have you been coping since then?" she asked, her green eyes sharp and observant. Elijah hesitated. How could he explain the complex mix of emotions he'd been experiencing? The initial fear and confusion had given way to something else, a sense of curiosity, even excitement. "It's been different," he said carefully. "Challenging, of course, but also interesting in a way." Agent Reed's eyebrow arched slightly. "Interesting? How so?" Elijah felt a blush creep across his cheeks. "Well, it's just, I've never experienced life from this perspective before. It's opening my eyes to a lot of things I never considered." The agent leaned forward, her interest piqued. "Can you give me an example?" Elijah's mind raced, trying to articulate the myriad of new experiences he'd encountered. "Well, there's the physical stuff, obviously. Different center of gravity, different, body parts to deal with." He felt his face grow even hotter. "But it's more than that. The way people treat me, the expectations, it's like seeing the world through new eyes." Agent Reed nodded, making another note. "And how do you feel about potentially returning to your original body?" The question caught Elijah off guard. He'd been so focused on adapting to his new reality that he hadn't given much thought to switching back. To his surprise, the idea didn't fill him with the relief he might have expected. I'm not sure," he admitted. "Part of me misses my old life, of course, but another part—" He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Agent Reed's gaze softened slightly. "It's okay to have conflicting feelings about this," she assured him. "This is an unprecedented situation. There's no right or wrong way to react." Their conversation continued for another hour, with Agent Reed probing deeper into Elijah's experiences and emotions. By the time she left, Elijah felt drained but also oddly relieved. It was the first time he'd been able to openly discuss the complex feelings swirling inside him. As the black car pulled away from the curb, Elijah caught sight of his reflection in the window. Soraya's face looked back at him, but the expression was all his own, a mix of uncertainty and growing acceptance. Across town, Soraya was having a very different conversation with another FBI agent. She sat rigidly in Elijah's body, her discomfort evident in every tense line of her posture. "I hate this," she said bluntly, Elijah's deep voice filled with frustration. "Every moment in this body feels wrong. I want my life back." The agent, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, nodded sympathetically. "I understand, Soraya. We are doing everything we can to resolve this situation. In the meantime, is there anything that's helping you cope? Soraya shook her head vehemently. Nothing helps. I can't get used to this maleness, the strength, the size, the way people look at me now. It's all wrong. As the weeks stretched into months, the stark difference in Elijah and Soraya's adaptation became increasingly apparent. Elijah found himself embracing aspects of Soraya's life with growing enthusiasm. He experimented with makeup, reveling in the artistic expression it allowed. Clothes became a new frontier of self-expression, and he found himself eagerly trying on different styles and silhouettes. One afternoon, Elijah stood in front of Soraya's full-length mirror, admiring the way a floral sundress fit. The fabric swished pleasantly against his legs as he twirled, a smile playing on his lips. "Soraya!" Soraya's mother called from downstairs. "Can you come help me with dinner?" "Coming!" Elijah replied, his voice now a near-perfect imitation of Soraya's. He gave himself one last appraising look in the mirror before heading downstairs. In the kitchen, Soraya's mother was chopping vegetables for a salad. She looked up as Elijah entered, a warm smile spreading across her face. "Oh, honey, you look lovely," she said, gesturing to the dress. "Is that new?" Elijah nodded, running his hands over the soft fabric. "I found it in the back of the closet. I thought it might be nice for the warmer weather." Soraya's mother nodded approvingly. "It suits you perfectly. Now, can you start on the pasta while I finish up here?" As they worked side by side in the kitchen, Elijah felt a wave of contentment wash over him. The domestic scene, so different from his previous life, filled him with a sense of belonging he'd never experienced before. Meanwhile, Soraya struggled daily with her new reality. She avoided mirrors, hated the sound of her voice, and found little joy in activities she once loved. Basketball, once her passion, now felt foreign and uncomfortable in Elijah's larger, more powerful body. One particularly frustrating day, Soraya found herself in Elijah's room, angrily rifling through his closet. Everything felt wrong. Too big, too masculine, too not her. In a fit of desperation, she pulled out her phone and dialed Elijah's number. Elijah answered on the second ring, his voice soft and feminine. "Hello?" "I can't do this anymore," Soraya blurted out, Elijah's deep voice cracking with emotion. "How are you so okay with this? How can you just be me?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Elijah spoke again, his voice was gentle but firm. "I'm not trying to be you, Soraya. I'm just being myself in this new body." Soraya felt a surge of anger. "But it's my body, and I'm stuck in yours, and I hate it. Don't you want to switch back?" Another pause, longer this time. I don't know," Elijah admitted. "I know it's not fair to you, but I've found something here that I never knew I was missing." The conversation ended shortly after, leaving both with much to think about. For Elijah, it was a moment of clarity, a realization that his comfort in Soraya's body went beyond mere adaptation. For Soraya, it was a crushing blow, the hope of returning to her old life seeming to slip further away. As spring turned to summer, the investigation into their switch continued. Scientists ran tests, theorists proposed wild hypotheses, and still no concrete answers emerged. The media attention, which had initially been intense, began to wane as the novelty of their situation faded. For Elijah, each day brought new discoveries and joys. He reveled in the softness of his skin, the graceful movements of his new body. Soraya's long hair became a source of endless fascination. He spent hours experimenting with different styles, from intricate braids to elegant updos. One warm afternoon, Elijah decided to tackle a milestone he'd been both anticipating and dreading: swimsuit shopping. Soraya's mother had suggested a trip to the beach, and Elijah realized he needed appropriate attire. Standing in the fitting room of a local boutique, Elijah eyed the array of colorful bikinis and one-pieces with a mix of excitement and trepidation. He selected a modest navy blue one-piece and a more daring red bikini, then took a deep breath and began to change. As he left the store with his purchases, Elijah felt a spring in his step. The idea of wearing these swimsuits in public still made him a bit nervous, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of self-assurance. That evening, as Elijah carefully painted his nails a shimmering coral color, his phone buzzed with a text from Agent Reed. The FBI wanted to schedule another interview to check on his progress and gather more data. Elijah agreed to the meeting, a mix of emotions swirling inside him. Part of him worried that the FBI might be close to finding a way to reverse the switch, a prospect that, to his surprise, filled him with more dread than relief. The next day, Agent Reed arrived at Soraya's house, her suit as impeccable as ever. They sat in the living room this time, the formal setting adding an air of gravity to their conversation. "So, Elijah," Agent Reed began, using his real name for the first time. "It's been several months now. How are you adjusting to life in Soraya's body?" Elijah took a deep breath, his painted nails tapping nervously against his knee. "Honestly, better than I ever expected. It's like I've discovered a part of myself I never knew existed." Agent Reed's eyebrows rose slightly. "Can you elaborate on that?" "It's hard to explain," Elijah said, searching for the right words. "At first, everything was so strange and scary, but as time went on, I started to feel right in a way I never did before. The clothes, the makeup, the way I move and speak now. It all feels natural, like this is who I was always meant to be." The agent nodded, making a note in her ever-present notebook. "And how do you feel about the possibility of switching back?" Elijah's heart raced at the question. He looked down at his hands, at the delicate fingers and shimmering nails that had become such a part of his identity. I don't want to," he admitted quietly. "I know that's probably not what you want to hear, and I know it's not fair to Soraya, but the thought of going back to my old body, it feels wrong now." Agent Reed's expression remained neutral, but her eyes softened slightly. "Elijah, there's no right or wrong answer here. Your feelings are valid, even if they're complicated. Have you discussed this with Soraya?" Elijah shook his head. "Not really. I know she's struggling and I feel guilty about that, but I can't pretend I want to switch back when I don't." The conversation continued, delving deeper into Elijah's experiences and emotions. By the end, he felt drained, but also relieved. Voicing his true feelings, even to a near stranger, felt like a weight lifting from his shoulders. As Agent Reed prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "Elijah, I want you to know that whatever happens, whatever is decided, your well-being is a priority. We're not just looking for a scientific solution here. We're trying to find the best outcome for both you and Soraya." Elijah nodded, grateful for her understanding. As the black car pulled away, he found himself wondering what the future might hold. Would he be allowed to stay in this body that felt so right? Or would he be forced back into a life that no longer fit? Across town, Soraya was grappling with her own turbulent emotions. Each day in Elijah's body felt like a battle, a constant reminder of everything she had lost. She avoided mirrors, hated the sound of her voice, and found little joy in activities she once loved. The FBI agent assigned to her case, a sympathetic man named Agent Donovan, had just left after another draining interview. Soraya sat on Elijah's bed, her large hands clenched into fists. "I can't live like this," she muttered, the deep voice still jarring to her ears. "There has to be a way to fix this." In a moment of desperation, she reached for Elijah's phone and dialed her own number. It rang several times before Elijah answered, his voice soft and feminine. "Hello?" "We need to talk," Soraya said, trying to keep the anger out of her voice. "Face to face. Can you meet me at the park in an hour?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Okay," Elijah agreed finally. "I'll be there." An hour later, they sat on opposite ends of a park bench, the tension between them palpable. Soraya couldn't help but stare at her own body, now inhabited by Elijah. The way he sat, the gentle curve of his posture, the confident set of his shoulders. It was all so different from how she remembered carrying herself. "You look comfortable," Saria said, unable to keep the bitterness from her tone. Elijah nodded, his expression a mix of guilt and defiance. I am, he admitted. Saria, Do you even want to switch back? Saria interrupted, voicing the fear that had been growing in her mind. Elijah's silence was answer enough. Saria felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over her. How can you be okay with this? She demanded. This is my life you're living. I'm not trying to take your life, Elijah said softly. I'm just living my own in this body. I can't explain it, Saria, but this feels right to me in a way nothing ever has before. Saria stood up abruptly, Elijah's tall frame towering over the bench. And what about me? What about what I want? I hate this, Elijah. Every single day in this body feels wrong. Elijah's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. Thanks for watching. Check out Patreon if you want to have early access to the other parts. If not, it will be online in a couple of days.